Welcome to Growth Hack by Poppy Digital. Tips and tricks to master the algorithms from industry insiders. Now here's your host, Julian Espinoza.
Welcome back to Growth Hack, where we break down marketing channels like Google, Facebook, Instagram, and show them how to make them work for you. COVID. We know it's affected consumer behavior. Exactly how has it though? Well, on this episode of Growth Hack, we talk COVID and how it's affected purchasing behavior. Take a moment to think for a second. Since COVID, have you changed the way you buy things? Locally versus online? What did you used to buy in the store? What do you buy online now? I know I have. It's funny, there's some things I would have never considered purchasing online, but because of COVID, now I have. Toothpaste, paper towels, kitchen soap, and the list goes on. These behavior changes have big implications for businesses. For this conversation, we brought in Greg Sterling. Greg is the VP of Market Insights for Uberall. Greg was also a contributing editor for Search Engine Land for the last 14 years. Welcome, Greg.
Hi, Julian. It's good to be here.
Let's get right into it. How has COVID specifically impacted local search?
COVID's impacted everything about the internet, obviously. Local search is a kind of subset of that, and it's important because most things that people are doing online historically have pertained to their communities, their area, right? Restaurants, where do I buy something, appointments, services, paint somebody to come in and paint my bathroom. So people have historically used the internet to find all this information. And it wasn't really well understood because it wasn't trackable until mobile, which, goes back now 15 years to the iPhone. But with specifically, once COVID triggered these lockdowns, people couldn't go out to stores to the same degree. I mean, they could, but not exactly. And so people started buying everything online, right? I mean, you've heard the sort of, it's now almost a cliche, 10 years of e-commerce in 90 days, the e-commerce evolution. And it's kind of true. People started buying more things online in total volume and different kinds of things than they had ever bought before. And I think that, in one of the quarters last year, Target said that like 50% of their e-commerce buyers were new to Target.com. These were loyal Target customers who really didn't buy anything online, but suddenly were driven online to buy stuff. So you have a much bigger e-commerce audience than you did before. And so now we have this kind of hybrid phenomenon where people will buy online and pick something up in the store, or they'll reserve online, or they'll order online, and then there's some sort of offline fulfillment. So there's a much more hybridized crossover kind of environment now than we used to have, where it was much cleaner, sort of pure e-commerce, pure online, or offline, even though people were doing online research.
It's interesting because, me as we're all in digital. This is what we do for a living. There was just things that I bought in store. I always bought my toothpaste. I always bought my deodorant. I always bought really bought particular items. But then if I was buying like a new flashlight for my camping gear, like I'd buy that online.
Right, exactly. So you're a microcosm of the larger phenomenon, right? So stuff like toothpaste or whatever that you never would have thought about buying online before because you were just out in the world and going into stores. Now people are doing that, and they appreciate the convenience of that. So we're now living in a much more digitally centric. I mean, the internet was already sort of a dominant influence on purchase behavior, but now we're in a much more digitally centric world. That doesn't mean that people aren't still getting stuff from stores. Most commerce is still happening in stores, but the internet is much more front and center in that entire process. People are buying cars online, right? I mean, that's been one of the biggest changes, is the degree to which the whole car buying process is migrating online. And that's something that you never, like years ago, people would have said, oh, no one's going to ever buy a car online. Now it's happening, and it's becoming more and more routine.
So for local businesses, what do you think we need to be paying attention to from a local marketing standpoint?
So when you say local business, right, this is one of the sort of challenges of this space, is what does local mean? So often people use the word local to refer to small business, but it can also refer to Starbucks or Best Buy or Walmart, right? These are businesses that exist in the community. And in fact, in some survey at Uberall, we run a bunch of consumer surveys, and one of them we asked, do you consider these branded stores, these outlets of big national chains to be local businesses, and 2/3 said yes. So it's, but you're talking about small business, right?
Yeah, we're talking about like, the small, like where you really can't sell something online, or maybe they can be selling online and they just haven't. So what kind of impact have you seen specifically, and what should they be paying attention to?
Well, the short answer is they need to make the assumption that their customer is always going to start from a digital sort of first position, right? It's going to be Google. In some cases, it's going to be Amazon, but it's going to be primarily one of those two places, and mostly Google, where people will do some sort of category high level search, right? So X near me, or best X in geography. And they need to be present in those search results, right? They either need to be in that 3-pack on Google, or they need to be on a site like Yelp, where people are going to go into a secondary kind of investigation. So they have to be there. Also, social media is very, very important for them. And most small businesses are already kind of on social media in one form or another.
What do you think in terms of these changes? Do you think they're going to be permanent? Do you think people are going to go back? Am I going to start going to buy deodorant back in the store again? What's going on?
Well, so yes and no. The example that I like to, so the answer is both. Some changes are permanent, but there's going to be some reversion to old behavior. So grocery shopping is a good metaphor for this whole space, right? I had never really had groceries delivered before COVID, and then I started having deliveries from Whole Foods, and it was for the most part it was a good experience until they put that service charge on it whenever, and I haven't done it since that time. But so most of the time, I go into the store. Sometimes I have groceries delivered, and sometimes I buy the groceries online and I pick them up in the parking lot. And it all depends upon my schedule, convenience, whatever's going on. So this is now the way that consumers approach things. I might buy it online. I might buy it offline. Depends on what's going on for me today. If I don't have time, I'm going to get it online. Or if I need it faster, I might get it offline. It's going to be completely situational. You don't have online and offline shoppers like you used to. You used to have people who were more oriented toward online shopping, and then the majority offline. And now you have agnosticism, right? It's going to be entirely situationally dependent. So you might buy toothpaste in the store if you're in the store and you see it, but you're going to keep buying it online. They're not mutually exclusive. And that's a profound difference.
It's interesting to chart this on a chart because we've got the bell curve, right? So we've got the most adopters had already happened. Anyone who was going to use the internet had already been using it. And the people who hadn't used it weren't using it. But at this point, I mean, the funny thing is you see grandmas now on Zoom, right? Which you would have never seen before. And the funny thing is how many of them love it, right? They love being online, and they love this whole internet of things, and this evolution. So it'd be interesting to see that curve. Do you guys have any data on like what that curve has looked like?
Well, I mean, I think you're right that it is a bell curve. The people that stay in a windowless room and buy everything online on the one hand, and then the people that hadn't bought much of anything on the other side. And then everybody in the middle. But what's really, so in terms of data, I can't. I mean, the e-commerce numbers. There was triple-digit growth last year, and there's all kinds of data on what kinds of things consumers are buying. The thing I can pull out of my posterior here is a survey data point that says 96% of consumers, and this was at 4,000 consumers across different countries, 96% of consumers are using the internet as part of their purchase process, whether the transaction is online or offline, and 60% are usually or always doing that. So the number of people who went from casual internet users or occasional buyers online to much more frequent buyers or much more intense users is what's really changed. It's a question of degree and intensity rather than completely new populations coming online, even though that did happen, as in my Target example. So it's like you didn't buy toothpaste, now you're buying toothpaste. Somebody didn't buy a car, now they're buying a car. Somebody didn't buy shoes ever online, now they're buying shoes online, that kind of thing.
I do like this concept that the answer is both, right? That it is happening, and some of it will go back, some of it won't. It's just the new the new norm, right?
Well, let me make one other point that I made to you kind of in our earlier call. Sorry for extending here. One of the things that's really important to recognize about stores, physical locations, people trust those businesses because they're familiar with them. If you have a business in the community, you're more likely to be trusted. You have to be online. You have to be prepared to service people online, but that store is a huge asset. And one thing that's not well understood is the way in which stores help people buy online with confidence. If there's a store there that I can take something back to, I'm going to be much more likely to buy something online than I would if there's no store and I have to think about shipping it back and the hassle of doing that.
And I think Amazon has solved a little bit of that. They've definitely eased the pain for me.
Absolutely.
I can just go into a Whole Foods and literally drop it off with no packaging. Just here you go. Here's this thing.
And that's a great experience. That's a great experience. And it does make it a lot easier to deal with take a risk on something that you might otherwise not, because it's so easy to get, drop it back off.
I was doing that with ankle braces. I needed an ankle brace. My ankle started weaning a little bit, and I said, you know what? I need to get an ankle brace. I tried like 3 different ones, bought them all, sent 2 of them back, kept 1.
Exactly. And that's what people do. That behavior is something that's very common, is that people will buy one size on either side of the one that they think they need because they're essentially trying stuff on and then they're going to send it back. That's a very common behavior.
And so this is not a sustainability podcast, but we have heard that there is a lot of issues with that concept that Amazon deals with in these returns. But that's for another podcast. Someone else will take that on. So going into this post, because we're still during COVID, we're still recording this. We're recording this one in October,
right?
But we're starting to get to the late stages of COVID and hopefully be exiting out of that. What's your advice moving forward to digital marketers and companies to adapt to this post-COVID consumer behavior?
Well, I mean, it's going to sound very mundane, to anybody who's in digital marketing. They're already drinking the Kool-Aid here. It's like you have to do more. You have to do more of what you're doing, and you have to recognize that you have to deliver a good experience. I mean, if you're a direct to consumer, pure play e-commerce, you're already sort of know what you need to be doing. But if you're a physical business that has a digital presence, you really have to beef up that digital presence and recognize it's the starting point. And you've got to make the best impression you can there and push as much of your information online, whether it's inventory or, your story as a business, images, all of that has to be online. It's not just a perfunctory thing. You've got to make your first impression there, give the consumer the best experience, and then leverage that store, that local presence as well as part of that whole thing. I mean, there's a longer conversation about, ad pricing and the cost of marketing online and how that's sort of gone through the roof like everything else. And that's an interesting discussion because a lot of direct-to-consumer brands are going offline and people are trying things like out of home to deal with the cost of social ads and PPC ads on Google in certain categories. But it's just more, and you've got to do it better, is the sort of crude version. Understand where your customers are, really know what your customers are doing, don't make assumptions, and then follow them online and deliver the best experience you can, which is a holistic proposition, obviously.
When you say more, you're just saying you need to be doing more online, right?
Yes, you need to be doing so for the companies that set up a GMB presence, for example, Google My Business, and they just they put up basic information, a few photographs, and maybe they're using Google Posts occasionally. You've got to turn that up, turn up the volume on all of that.
What does that look like?
Better images, more images. Use Google Posts, video. Get your products there. See what's in store. Showcase your business much more completely. And then reviews, really, really invest in responding to reviews and engaging with people in reviews. That's really important. I mean, I just wrote a report on review fraud. That's a whole long other discussion, but only this was as of 2019. It's like a minority of brands that had local stores were responding to reviews on Google My Business. I mean, it's totally being neglected. So it seems self-evident to us, but it's often an operational problem for some of these larger organizations. Small businesses get it and they do a better job, generally speaking. But you've got to turn up the volume on all your efforts and images have become really important. High quality, lot of images, important for even for ranking to some degree now, let alone sort of the conversion thing, which is ultimately where you want to go.
All right, so local search is evolving. Everything's evolving digitally, and our behaviors are changing. Everything's changing. So I think you've been doing something really special, keeping the industry informed. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. Mike Blumenthal and David Mim and I started a newsletter, started a site called nearmedia.co. And it's just really a place for us to express opinions and keep tabs on what's going on in the industry. We do a weekly podcast, and we have a 3 times a week newsletter, and there's some longer pieces there. You can find it at nearmedia.co, and we'd love for you to subscribe and give us feedback. It's a kind of a side project, a pet project, but it may evolve into something else over time.
What's the name of the show?
We call it the Near Memo. It's not my I didn't come up with that, but close to the brand, hewing close to the brand, not too many brands.
Near Memo, and it's on Apple, Spotify, all the major places.
Exactly.
Well, Greg, thanks for coming on the show. We really, really appreciate it. I'm going to definitely tune into that podcast. There'll be a link to the podcast and a link to the newsletter in the show notes. And thanks for being here. And if you guys want to hear more about local search, let us know, and we will invite Greg back.
Thank you. Hopefully. Vote for me. Yes. Want to come back.
Thanks, Greg. Bye-bye.